Have you ever felt a pang of envy scrolling through Instagram, looking at someone else's perfectly curated vacation photos? Or maybe you've wondered why a single, small criticism from a boss can completely ruin your entire week, even when everything else is going right? That feeling of being not enough, it's exhausting, isn't it? It's that tightening in your chest when you compare your behind the scenes with everyone else's highlight reel. We constantly measure our worth against our peers, our neighbors, our colleagues, even strangers on the internet, and often we come up short. We tell ourselves we just need to work harder, hustle more, or buy that one thing to finally feel complete. But the finish line keeps moving. Here is the truth that might save you some sleepless nights. This isn't a personal failing. You aren't insecure or broken. You are simply running an ancient biological program that you never agreed to install.
In his groundbreaking book, The Status Game, author Will Storr argues that this relentless drive isn't just vanity, it's a survival mechanism. Storr writes that status is a resource as real as oxygen or water. Let that sink in for a moment. To your brain, status isn't just about being popular or having a corner office. It is literally about staying alive. Think back to our hunter-gatherer ancestors. If you were a human living in a tribe 50,000 years ago, falling to the bottom of the pecking order didn't just mean you weren't invited to the party. It meant you ate last. It meant you were less likely to find a mate. And in the worst-case scenario, it meant expulsion from the group, which was effectively a death sentence. So we evolved a hypersensitive alarm system, a subconscious radar that is constantly scanning the room, asking, am I being respected? Do they value me? Am I safe?
Storr explains that we are all players in what he calls the status game. It is a game played inside our minds where we are the heroes of our own stories, constantly battling for position. The problem is, our ancient brains haven't caught up to modern American life. We aren't just competing with the 30 people in our tribe anymore. We are competing with millions of people on social media, global icons, and an endless stream of success stories beamed directly into our pockets. This biological imperative is why losing status hurts physically. It's why public humiliation feels like a punch to the gut. As Storr puts it, when we lose status, we break. Depression, anxiety, and that gnawing sense of inadequacy are often just the symptoms of a status game that we feel we are losing. But if this is a game we are forced to play, how exactly do we win it? Or at least, how do we stop it from destroying us? To understand that, we first need to understand the rules. And it turns out there isn't just one way to play. In fact, human history has produced 3 distinct types of status games, and you are probably playing all of them right now without even realizing it.
Dominance, virtue, and success. Those are the 3 modes of play, and once you know their names, you can't unsee them. They are the operating system running beneath every conversation, every tweet, and every awkward silence in the break room. Welcome to The Last Read. Books for your ears, wisdom for your life. Today, we are cracking open The Status Game. And honestly, you should think of this book as the red pill. It exposes the invisible matrix of human behavior that we've all been trapped in since birth. We like to believe we are rational, independent agents, making our own choices. But this book argues we are actually just responding to an ancient, subconscious code designed to keep us climbing a ladder that doesn't really exist. By the end of this episode, I promise you, you will look at every social interaction differently. You'll understand why your neighbor buys that car, why politicians tweet what they tweet, and why you feel that sudden flush of shame when you make a mistake in public. So, before we plug you back into the simulation, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. You do not want to miss the keys to unlocking your own psychology. And if you want to study the full source code for yourself, the link to the book is in the description. Now, to understand the rules of this game, we first have to understand the observer who mapped them out. The guide for our journey is a man named Will Storr. He isn't just an academic reciting data in a dry lecture hall. He's an award-winning journalist and novelist who has spent his career diving into the strange, dark corners of the human condition.
He's an award-winning journalist and novelist who has spent his career diving into the strange, dark corners of the human condition. You see, Storr isn't interested in the easy answers. He's a detective of the human psyche. You might know him from his previous bestseller, Selfie, where he surgically dismantled our modern obsession with being perfect. In that book, he explored who we think we are, but in the status game, he goes much deeper. He wants to know why we are. What makes Storr unique is his ability to weave together heavy academic threads, evolutionary biology, anthropology, psychology, and spin them into a story that reads like a thriller. He doesn't just cite studies from a dusty library. He goes out and talks to the people living on the edges, from influencers to enemies of science, trying to understand the invisible forces that drive them.
He treats the human brain not as a logical computer, but as a storyteller that is constantly lying to us to keep us alive. And his conclusion is startling. He argues that we are all essentially programmed to play a game we didn't choose, a game that was coded into our DNA on the African savanna, and one that we are still playing today in our offices and on Instagram. Now, to play this game, you need a way to keep score. You need a mechanism to know exactly where you stand in the tribe at any given moment. And as it turns out, your brain has evolved a specific piece of software for exactly that purpose. So here's the reality check. We like to think of ourselves as these highly sophisticated, rational beings, wearing suits, driving electric cars, engaging in polite debate. But Will Storr has a different name for us. He calls us status-seeking monkeys. And I know that might sting a little, but stick with me. Storr argues that inside your head, right now, there is a piece of ancient machinery humming away. Imagine it like a video game. You know those first-person shooters? You have that heads-up display, the HUD, in the corner of the screen. It shows your health, your ammo, your map. Well, according to Storr, your brain has a status HUD, and it is constantly, relentlessly measuring your rank. It scans every room you walk into. It analyzes every conversation. It's asking, am I higher or lower than this person? Is my rank going up or down? It's a status detection system that never sleeps, and it treats status not as a luxury, but as a resource, as real and vital as oxygen or water. Now, why? Why are we wired this way? Because for our ancestors, that HUD wasn't a game. It was life or death. On the African savanna, if your status bar dropped to 0, you didn't just have a bad day, you died. To be low status meant you got the scraps of food, you got the worst sleeping spots, exposed to predators. And if you dropped off the leaderboard entirely, you were exiled. You were cast out of the tribe to face the lions alone. So nature coded a simple rule into our DNA: get status or die. The problem is, we aren't on the savanna anymore, but nobody told our brains that. We're still running that same prehistoric software in a modern world, and it is constantly misfiring. Think about it. This is why you feel a sudden, irrational spike of rage when someone cuts you off in traffic. That driver didn't just delay you by 4 seconds. In the deep lizard part of your brain, they just disrespected your rank. They signaled that you are less than them, and your internal alarm bells start ringing. Warning, status threat, survival at risk. It's why we obsess over likes on social media. Storr calls these platforms social slot machines. We pull the lever, post the photo, and wait for the HUD to tell us we matter. When the likes roll in, we get a hit of dopamine. When they don't, we feel a genuine physical drop in our well-being. We are walking around with a survival mechanism that treats a snarky email from a boss or a lack of retweets as a threat to our very existence. But here is where it gets really interesting, because we don't all play the same game to fill that status bar. Storr identifies 3 distinct games humans play to climb the ladder, and the first one is the oldest, darkest, and most dangerous of them all.
The dominance game. This is the oldest game of them all, the one that predates humanity itself. If you look at a troop of chimpanzees, you are watching a pure, unadulterated dominance game. In this game, status is not earned, it is taken. It is claimed through force, fear, and the threat of violence. The rule is simple: do what I say or suffer the consequences. We all know what this looks like in its crudest form. It's the playground bully demanding your lunch money, or the tyrannical dictator who rules an entire nation through sheer terror. But Storr points out that in our modern civilized world, the dominance game hasn't disappeared, it has just become more subtle.
Think about the office environment. We've all encountered that one manager who doesn't lead by inspiring the team, but by keeping everyone on edge. They use humiliation, aggressive body language, or the silent treatment to assert their rank. They aren't trying to be respected for their competence, they are trying to be feared for their power. And here is the dangerous paradox of the dominance game. It works, but it is incredibly fragile. When you rule by fear, you don't build allies, you build enemies. Storr explains that in our evolutionary past, the alpha who relied solely on brutality didn't last very long. Eventually, the tribe would tire of the abuse, band together, and, well, remove the problem. Dominance creates a high-stakes existence where you have to sleep with one eye open, constantly paranoid that your rank is about to be challenged. Take a moment to reflect. Do you know someone playing this game right now? Someone who relies on intimidation rather than connection to get what they want. It's exhausting just being around them, isn't it? Fortunately, as our brains evolved and our tribes got larger, we developed a new way to climb the ladder, one that didn't require muscles or threats. We invented a game based not on how scary you could be, but on how good you could be. This is the second game, the virtue game.
This brings us to the second game, the virtue game. If the dominance game is about how strong you are, the virtue game is about how good you are. In this game, status isn't taken by force, it's awarded to those who follow the rules the best, or perhaps more accurately, to those who are seen to follow the rules the best. Historically, this has been the engine behind massive institutions like the church. For centuries, you climbed the social ladder by being the most pious, the most obedient, the most moral person in the village. If you could prove you were more devoted to the cause than your neighbor, you won the game.
But this isn't just about ancient history or religion. We see the exact same mechanic playing out today in modern culture. Think about woke culture, or the intense dynamics of online shaming on platforms like X. The currency has changed, but the game remains the same. You gain status by signaling your moral purity, and often by loudly pointing out the moral impurity of others. Storr gives us a classic example. Imagine someone who donates a large sum of money to charity. Now that is objectively a good deed. But if they immediately post about it on social media, ensuring everyone sees the receipt, are they playing a success game, or are they playing a virtue game? They are effectively saying, "Look at me, look how good I am." They are cashing in their morality for status. And this is where things get dangerous. Storr warns us about something called toxic morality. You see, when we become obsessed with proving how virtuous we are, the easiest way to do that is often to attack someone who isn't. We start to feel justified in destroying others, their reputations, their careers, under the guise of doing the right thing.
It creates a strange paradox where we can commit incredibly cruel acts while feeling like the hero of the story. As Storr puts it, toxic morality is deeply implicated in these episodes. Genocide is highly moralistic. It's a chilling reminder that the road to hell is often paved with status-seeking intentions. So the virtue game is powerful, but it can be just as destructive as the dominance game if we aren't careful. But there is a third way, a game that has driven most of the progress we enjoy today. It's not about how scary you are, and it's not about how good you claim to be. It's about what you can actually do. This is the engine of civilization, the success game.
The success game. Now, if the dominance game is about fear, and the virtue game is about morality, the success game is about competence. This is the game of doing things well. It's the game of skill, of achievement, of being useful to the tribe. In our hunter-gatherer days, the winners of this game weren't the ones beating their chests or the ones scolding you for breaking a taboo. They were the ones who were actually good at stuff. The best hunters, the best honey finders, the best storytellers. Will Storr calls this game the engine of civilization, and he's not exaggerating. Think about it. This game incentivizes us to become smarter, faster, and more innovative. It gave us the printing press, the polio vaccine, the iPhone, and landing on the moon. When we play the success game, we aren't trying to scare people or claim we're holier than them. We're trying to impress them with our value. We see this everywhere today. It's the scientist pulling an all-nighter to crack a new formula. It's the entrepreneur building a company that creates thousands of jobs. It's the athlete, like Serena Williams, pushing the boundaries of human performance. These people are winning status by lifting the rest of us up with them. In many ways, it's the healthiest game we play. But you knew there was a but coming, didn't you? The success game has a trap built right into its foundation. Storr uses this vivid image of a ladder that you climb and climb and climb. You look up, expecting to see the top, the moment where you can finally say, I made it, I'm enough. But the top never comes. The ladder just keeps extending into the clouds. Because the success game is relative. As Storr points out, we're not wired to feel good when we have enough. We're wired to feel good when we have more than other people. So you get the promotion? Great. But now you're in a room with other people who also got promoted, and you're at the bottom of that hierarchy. You make $1 million, suddenly you're hanging out with people who have 10 million.
The goalposts move, always. This creates a modern epidemic of what Storr calls social perfectionism. It's that gnawing anxiety that you have to be perfect, that you have to work harder, just to justify your existence. It leads to burnout. It leads to that crushing 3 a.m. feeling of inadequacy, where no matter what you've achieved, you feel like a fraud. We become hamsters on a wheel, running ourselves into the ground because we're terrified that if we stop, we'll lose our place. And that fear is valid, because in the status game, gravity is real. You can climb for years, building your reputation brick by brick. But if you slip, if you fail publicly, if the group decides you're no longer useful, you don't just stop climbing, you fall. And when you hit the bottom, that is where things get truly dangerous. That is where we encounter the one thing the human brain fears almost more than death itself. It's a psychological weapon Storr calls the nuclear bomb of social interaction.
Humiliation. That is the nuclear bomb of human emotions. If status is the lifeblood of our psychological existence, the oxygen that keeps our sense of self alive, then humiliation is suffocation. It is psychological death. Will Storr doesn't mince words here. He calls it the annihilation of the self. When you are humiliated, the group isn't just lowering your rank. They are effectively saying you have no rank. You are being removed from the game entirely. And because our brains are wired to believe that no status equals death in the wilderness, the reaction to this is visceral. It is primal. Storr argues that this specific emotion is the root cause of an enormous amount of human suffering and violence. When people feel humiliated,
they don't just get sad. They often experience what psychologists call humiliated fury. Think about that moment when someone cuts you off in traffic.
Now, logically, it's a minor inconvenience. It costs you 2 seconds. But what happens? You flash your lights, you lean on the horn, maybe you even speed up to block them. Why? Because it wasn't just a lane change, it was a status signal. That driver signaled that your time, your safety, and your existence were less important than theirs. They lowered your status. And that surge of rage you feel, that is your brain trying to repair the damage. It is a desperate attempt to reassert your dominance and say, I matter, you cannot ignore me. We see this everywhere once we start looking. Storr points out that so many of our modern conflicts, from nasty divorce proceedings to libel lawsuits, aren't really about the money. They are expensive, exhausting rituals of status repair. We are willing to burn down our own resources just to force the other person to acknowledge our standing.
And in its most extreme forms, this dynamic is terrifying. Storr discusses how humiliated grandiosity, that toxic mix of feeling you deserve to be a king but being treated like a peasant, is often the psychological profile behind school shooters and terrorists. It is the logic of the vengeful God. If the game will not give me the status I deserve through love or competence, I will force it to pay attention to me through fear. It is a dark realization. We are all walking around carrying this potential for nuclear fallout. We are terrified of falling, terrified of being erased. So, if the game is this dangerous, and if losing it feels like dying, what do we do? Do we just check out? Do we go live in a cave? Well, Storr says we can't really stop playing. We are human. We need to matter. But we can play a different kind of game. We can change the rules. There is a way to gain status that doesn't rely on dominating others or crushing yourself on the wheel of success. It's a strategy that seems almost too simple, yet it might be the only way to win without losing your soul. It starts with 2 words: warmth and sincerity.
Warmth and sincerity. It sounds like a greeting card, doesn't it? But Storr argues this is actually a high-level strategy for survival and sanity. See, when we project warmth, we are signaling to the other players, I am not going to play a dominance game with you. I am not going to hurt you. It disarms the neural alarm systems in the people around us. When we project sincerity, we are signaling, I am going to play a fair virtue game. I will tell you the truth, and I won't try to manipulate the rules. But there is a third leg to this stool. You can't just be nice, you also have to be useful. You need competence. Storr calls this the blessed triumvirate of human behavior: warmth, sincerity, and competence.
If you can master these 3, you become the ultimate player. You become someone who signals, I am not a threat, I play fairly, and I have skills that will help us survive. And here is the beautiful paradox of the status game. The most effective way to get status is actually to give it away. Storr points out that we often hoard status like it's a scarce resource. Like if I tell you that you did a good job, somehow I lose points. But the opposite is true. We have an infinite supply of status to give. Every time you listen, truly listen to someone. Every time you offer a sincere compliment. Every time you ask for advice, you are handing them a small moment of prestige. You are making them feel valuable. You are validating their avatar in the game.
And because humans are reciprocal creatures, when you make others feel like high-status heroes in their own story, they instinctively want to raise your status in return. They want to keep you around. They want you on their team. So the solution isn't to stop playing. We can't stop playing. The solution is to play a game of status generosity rather than status theft. It's about realizing that we don't have to crush people to matter. We can simply make them matter and rise together. But to do this effectively, to navigate these invisible hierarchies without losing your mind,
You need a clear mental model of the whole system. You need to see the board from above. In our final segment, we're going to zoom out one last time to give you the ultimate cheat sheet for the game of life.
And when you zoom out, the board becomes a lot clearer. According to Will Storr, the ultimate cheat sheet for the human experience basically boils down to identifying which of the three main games you and the people around you are actually playing. First, you've got the dominance game. This is the oldest, most primitive version, the might makes right strategy. It's ruled by fear, force, and intimidation. Think mafias, dictatorships, or that one boss who thinks yelling is a management style. Then there's the virtue game. This is where status is awarded to the dutiful, the obedient, the morally pure. It's about following the rules better than anyone else and judging those who don't. You see this in religious institutions, political movements, and, let's be honest, quite a bit of social media.
And finally, the success game. This is about competence. It's about skill, talent, and achievement. It's where we gain status by being useful, by solving problems, or by being the best at what we do, whether that's in a corporation or a sports league. The trick, the real mental model here, is realizing that most of us are playing a messy mix of all three. But if you don't understand the rules, you will get played. You'll try to win a virtue game with success tactics, or a dominance game with virtue, and you'll wonder why you're losing. Storr's final lesson is that we have to let go of the idea of winning permanently. There is no final level. There are no credits. As he puts it, the meaning of life is not to win, it's to play. It's about simple, humble progress, just moving in the right direction and understanding the game well enough to enjoy it, rather than being crushed by it. If you want to master these rules and see the board for yourself, I highly recommend picking up the full text. The link of the book is in the description. That's it for our deep dive into the status game. If you want to keep leveling up your understanding of the world, make sure you subscribe to The Last Read. We'll see you in the next book.